bullies yanked quiet girls' hair in class as she had them arrested on spot. It happened so fast. One moment, the classroom was filled with the quiet hum of students copying notes from the whiteboard, and the next, a shrill scream shattered the silence like glass. All heads turned. There she was, the quiet girl in the third row, the one nobody ever really noticed, hunched over her desk, trembling as strands of her long, black hair dangled from the clenched fist of the boy behind her. A hush swept the room like a sudden wind, followed by gasps and uneasy giggles. But what no one expected was what happened next. She stood up, slowly, eyes glistening with something that wasn't fear, a broken bar, but fury. And just 15 minutes later, with the police standing inside the classroom and the bullies in handcuffs, everyone realized they had never really known who she was at all. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and standing up for what's right even when it's hard, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to Echoes of Life. Stories like this one need to be heard. You never know who needs them. Her name was Alina, 17 years old, Talbot's light, with a quiet grace that made her seem almost invisible in a chaos of high school hallways. She never raised her hand in class, never joined in lunchtime chatter, never even so much as laughed out loud. Her presence was like a whisper, soft, subtle, almost forgettable. But behind those solemn eyes and downcast lids was a world of pain few would ever comprehend. She had transferred to the school just 3 months prior, after a tragic fire consumed her childhood home, claiming her father and leaving her with burn scars down her back that she kept hidden beneath layers of fabric and silence. Her mother, shattered by grief, had spiraled into depression, and it had fallen on Alina to hold together the fragile remains of their lives. From the moment she stepped into that classroom, she became a target. Maybe it was the way she kept to herself, maybe it was how she dressed in the same 2 sweaters week after week, or maybe it was just the way cruelty often sniffs out the wounded. The bullies zeroed in 3 of them, loud, confident, the kind that always sit at the back of the class like they own it. They mocked the way she spoke, mimicked the way she walked, and whispered things loud enough for her to hear. But she never reacted, not once, not a flicker of anger or sadness, just silence, until that day, the day they crossed the one line too many. They had been escalating for weeks, a knocked over lunch tray, a snapped pencil, notes snatched from her hands, until finally, that morning, one of them reached forward in class and yanked her hair, hard, laughing when she gasped in pain. They thought it was funny, the whole class did. A few chuckled nervously, the teacher didn't even notice. But what no one realized was that Alina had been documenting everything, every insult, every shove, every note passed about her, every whisper, every threat. She had saved them all. She had recordings, screenshots, voice memos, even a small hidden camera in her pencil pouch that had captured every cruel word they had ever thrown at her. Because Alina wasn't just quiet, she was smart, and she was done being afraid. That day, she walked out of the class mid-period without a word, marched straight to the principal's office, and showed them everything. The secretary called the school counselor, the counselor called the district officer, and within 20 minutes, 2 uniformed officers were standing outside the classroom door, waiting to escort 3 stunned teenagers out in handcuffs. The silence was deafening. Alina walked back into the room while they were being read their rights, picked up her backpack, and left again. No tears, no speeches, just calm, quiet power. What most people didn't know, what most people never cared to ask, was that Alina had been bullied for most of her life. First for her weight, then for her poverty, and now for her pain. She had tried to stay invisible, she had tried to endure, but this time, something had snapped. Maybe it was the memory of her father's arms wrapped around her as she cried herself to sleep after another rough day. Maybe it was the way her mother had stopped smiling since the fire. Or maybe it was just the breaking point that eventually comes for every soul pushed too far. But this time, Alina chose to fight back, not with fists, not with cruel words, but with truth, with evidence, with courage. In the days that followed, the story made headlines in the local papers and flooded school forums. Parents were furious, students were shocked. The administration tried to do damage control, but it was too late. The truth was out, and Alina, the quiet girl no one noticed, became a symbol. Other students came forward with their own stories. A girl from the junior class who had been mocked for her stutter. A freshman boy who had been shoved into lockers for being small. A senior who had once been harassed for wearing second-hand clothes. And for the first time in a long time, the silence of that school began to break. Alina didn't return to class for a week. When she did, something had shifted. Heads turned not in mockery but in awe. Whispers followed her down the hall, but not of ridicule, of respect. The same teacher who had ignored her pain now asked if she was okay. The counselor offered her extra support. The school set up a new anti-bullying initiative in her name. But Alina didn't want recognition. She just wanted peace. She wanted safety, not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever been made to feel small, unworthy, or unwanted. She began volunteering at the local community center, helping other students who struggled with anxiety, trauma, or social isolation. She gave a speech at the district assembly that was so raw, so honest, it left teachers in tears. She told them what it felt like to walk through school like a ghost, to cry in bathroom stalls, to pretend the words didn't hurt when they did. She didn't speak to shame, she spoke to heal. And in doing so, she gave a voice to the voiceless. Her bullies were sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling. It wasn't about punishment, it was about accountability. Alina didn't want revenge, she wanted growth. And over time, something unexpected happened. One of the boys, the very one who had yanked her hair, came to see her. He apologized, not because he had to, but because he had changed. Her strength had forced him to see himself clearly for the first time. And Alina, with a grace far beyond her years, forgave him. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own silent battles or the times you wished someone had stood up for you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Echoes of Life. Your voice matters, and sometimes, just hearing a story like this can change a life. Special request: if you've ever been bullied or stood up against injustice, please share your experience in the comments below. Let's create a space of healing and hope for everyone who needs to know they're not alone. Alina's story is not just about standing up to bullies. It's about reclaiming power in a world that too often tells the quiet ones to stay small. It's about how pain can be transformed into strength. It's about how one act of courage can ripple outward and begin to mend what generations of silence have broken. And above all, it's a reminder: never mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes, the quietest people hold the loudest truths, and when they finally speak, the world listens. Bullies yanked quiet girl's hair in class as she had them arrested on spot. It happened so fast. One moment, the classroom was filled with the quiet hum of students copying notes from the whiteboard, and the next, a shrill scream shattered the silence like glass. All heads turned. There she